This morning we turn our focus here in the market on the Nairobi Innovation Week, which will be happening next week. We know Kenyan startups will have the opportunity to apply to be one of the 100 pitching at the latest Nairobi Innovation Week in March. The organizers have partnered with a host of hubs and ecosystem players. The Nairobi Innovation Week is an annual event convened by the University of Nairobi, with the 4th edition taking place in March and expecting more than 4,000 delegates. And the theme of this year event is Innovating for a Better Tomorrow, with startups to be the mainstream focus of the event for the first time. And of course, if you've been watching AM Live with any regularity, you understand we'll be following what they have been doing since, of course, 2014, when they had their debut with the Nairobi Innovation Week. And of course, Dr. Tonny Omwansa, who is the chair of the Nairobi Innovation Week, will tell us more about this. And of course, we have a full panelist as well here to tell us more about what are the expectations of this year, running under the theme that we've just given you this morning. So allow me to introduce them. We have Dr. Tonny Omwansa, as I mentioned, who is the Nairobi Innovation Week chairman. And also we do have with us John Kieti. He's the Nairobi Innovation Startups Agenda Champion, and how he's benefited exceedingly from this particular program as well. We also have Dr. Karanja, the CEO of Vilgro Kenya, and Dr. Mwaniki from NetFund. Good morning, gentlemen. I hope I'm not missing anyone. I've mentioned all of you. Who am I missing? We all of you four, plus me five. Fantastic. And Dr. Tonny, you've been here with me. Yes. And we started with the startup. Correct. Right from the beginning, when we had also Dan Seno and we had Soul Singer from Israel coming to talk to us about this particular book. A very intriguing book that you should read, quite gripping when it comes to startups and how Israel is a leading country in terms of startups in the world. They collected here a compendium of so many testimonies of how companies, have really started from a very, very innovator, or I should say from a very humble beginning. So you don't really have to have the monies. You just have the idea. And of course, they normally say, if you build it, they will come. So this is the 4th edition. Yes. From the go-getting, since we had the sitting here with Singer, what has been the progress?
Okay. Thanks very much for having us, and it's always an honor to come back here. When we had the Soul Singer of Startup Nation about 2015, actually, it was, when it started occurring to us that we need to put startup agenda at the nucleus of Nairobi Innovation Week. Because then you have new stories, you inspire, you energize. I use the example of athletics where, the officials have to go to schools and find young athletes and find new talent and then develop it and showcase it for the country. So one of the things that has emerged over time is that we've made the startup agenda the nucleus, and we've developed a platform and are working with over 35 incubation hubs and accelerators in the country. And we harvested over 350 startups. We shortlisted. Now we have 100, and those 100 will be pitching during Innovation Week. And one of the things we'll do at the end of the Innovation Week, we will be recognizing the 15 most promising. And for us, that's something peculiar for the nation, because then we elevate, we discover, we expose the most promising startups for the country. The other thing that has actually happened is that partners have grown. We've got the triple helix, government, private sector, academia. And now we have over 50 different partners that we're working with, both local and international. The international community has continued to pick it up. We also have over 55 side events happening, and these are championed by different partners. So the conversations are extremely broad, and there is a lot of enrichment by different kind of stakeholders with different kind of expertise. So for that reason, we see it as a national movement.
National movement. Yeah. All right. So yes, are you trying also? Why do we normally have it in Nairobi only? Now we have Nairobi University. We have various campuses. Why do you largely focus on Nairobi for the last? We're not evolving.
Great. Great. When we're doing a movement, you always start with early adopters, and you try to minimize your concerns and risks and uncertainties.
And the movement has to move.
Exactly. Now it's to move. So now that we've hit the fourth year, I think now we've got the right momentum, and we've started engaging governors. And we do have, I don't want to mention which ones we've started talking to, but then we are looking for chapters at county level so that we can give a chance to different stakeholders as well to participate. All right.
Innovating for a better tomorrow. Let's hear from Dr. Karanja, Innovating for Better Tomorrow. So what is a better tomorrow? And in light of innovation, we know we are actually venturing into the world of artificial intelligence. Why is innovation very key and pivotal right now?
I think the better tomorrow is defined for us in Kenya by the Kenya Vision 2030. And I may not speak specifically to artificial intelligence, although that is one of the key areas that we, of course
we'll broach that subject, all of us, not necessarily you.
But for me personally, when I think of a better tomorrow, coming from a medical science background, what I'm looking at is how do we address the health statistics for this nation? How do we address the issues of food insecurity in this nation? How do we address the challenges of climate change, which have really rocked this region? And what does that mean for our, not just for us, but even for our children and our children's children? And that would require really for us to be able to start investing and to start innovating in a way that by the time our kids have grown up and their kids, they're bringing up their kids, they're actually talking about the history of this nation. We used to have hunger, we used to have famine, we used to have diseases that used to ravage us like malaria, like HIV, because we've actually resolved all of those issues, and they should be grappling with different issues. I think we should pass a baton that actually enables people to build, the next generation to build on our shoulders, just like we built on the shoulders of our parents.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from George Mwaniki from NetFriend, and how also innovation is pivotal for you as well. You can tell us how your organization has come in to support this very salutary effort that has been carried over the years by Nairobi University.
Right. As NetFund, we recognize that because we are an institution that is trying to promote environmental sustainability.
Yes, yes.
It is hard to really achieve environmental sustainability if people still depend on natural resources for their everyday kind of things they need. So innovations will kind of bring new ideas that can be turned into businesses. And once we have these businesses, then we have more opportunities for people to make a livelihood outside the natural resources. If you walk around the country today, it's hard to see any river that is actually clean enough to see through.
Yes.
Yeah, most of the rivers are brown, and that is from erosion because of the unsustainable practices we are using, mainly in agriculture and other activities. So innovations is one of the ways that we can try to start addressing these issues. We are thinking holistically, and once at the moment we entered the space, it was actually quite interesting because initially anybody would think the major problem most startups experience is actually finance. But actually, after being in the space for 4 years, we realized actually one of the biggest problems is actually management, where you see around 50% of all the startups in Kenya closed down within the first 2 years, and 70% of them close within 5 years. So basically all the small businesses which are started every year do not see the light of day or do not live past 5 years. So that is why we are actually quite interested in supporting the Nairobi Innovation Week, because out of there we'll get these innovators, we'll get kind of people who are going to work with them in terms of improving their management skills on how to run businesses, and maybe from there we are going to establish more sustainable startups.
All right, of course we need to question ourselves, why then do we have these startups? Of course they fall under the SMEs, closing shops. For the last, of course, 5 good years, you've mentioned the statistics, but we know, of course, for the last 5 years, almost 2.4 million SMEs have actually closed shop. Right, and we believe all this, they had good ideas. So what could be the problem? Is it the environment that is not really enabling for the business to thrive? Is it the funding that we have noble ideas, very, very novel, or ideas as well that they just go down the tubes because there's no support, there's no good structure, and the government maybe also is not keen on this? What could be the problem?
I actually think finance, when you look at the issues, finance comes at number 5. Number 1 is actually management skills of businesses. We are very poor on that. And you see most businesses in Kenya are family owned, but when the patriarch or the person who started the business passes on, most of those businesses do not see the light of day. I think the next bigger issue is policy. The policy environment is so unstable. For example, I think during Kibaki era, importing solar lighting systems was tax-free. 5 years later, there is tax imposed on that. So the policy environment need to be a little bit more stable for people in the private sector to be able to invest and be sure that whatever they invest works better. The other thing is the business atmosphere. Today, if you want to start a business in Nairobi, for you to rent a stall on Moi Avenue, you have to pay this thing called lease and goodwill of around 4-5 million shillings. How can a young startup actually raise that kind of money. And this is not money you're putting in the business. This is money just to get the premise. So that creates a lot of problems for startups, and we need to think about creatively. And that's why I actually like the ideas the University of Nairobi has started coming up with. So very soon in the future, we might see an innovation center where if I have an idea, I can just go there and for 5 years, I don't pay rent, and I can try to start it there and establish it for 5 years. Maybe after I start making profit, then I can be kicked out to go out to the open.
All right, let's say from John, I think you are one of the champions. Actually, you are one of the champions and a prime example of what Nairobi Innovation Week has done in trying to, expose people with very good ideas as well. First of all, why do you think your idea was novel, and why did you get to be the champion of this particular innovation? Will you tell us, was it last year or the year from the go-getting? Tell us more about this, and how has it also been, how has it brought some discernible difference in your life as well?
Okay, so thank you. John is a good friend of mine, but unfortunately I'm not John.
Oh, you're not John?
I'm Tembe, so I'll take over from him for now. So my name is Tembe Karike, so I'm part of GIZ, which is the German Development Corporation. So we implement projects on behalf of the German government. And in this particular focus, we've been working with John, we've been working with Dr. Omwansa and Dr. Karanja and others to be part of the Nairobi Innovation Week. So I'm part of a project called Make IT in Africa.
Make IT in Africa?
Yes, Make IT in Africa, which is an initiative coming from the German government. And the whole idea was that, there's the recognition that digital is transforming the way impact is made in this world. Mm-hmm. So it's more rapid that you can come up with a company that is solving, a certain problem, whether it's in health, it's in agriculture. So the idea was that how do we support the ecosystems? I've heard us talking about the environment for startups, whether it's financing, whether it's management skills. So some of the things that we've been working on in this Make IT program is, for example, partnering on an acceleration program. Right now there's one that is running with NILAB, where 15 startups are going through a program where they're being supported in their management, in their growth. Mm-hmm. And then now we're really working closely with the Nairobi Innovation Week to see how we can bring together ecosystem players to talk and to figure out how can we create a better environment for startups. Mm-hmm. Yes. Environment for startups.
Yes. Right. Back to you, Tony, because we want to also look at the facets that you have. First of all, even if we are innovating, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we extract from the environment. Right, we need materials from the environment, and that's why I think NetFund is here as well, to make sure that the environment sustainability also is really observed. Over the years, and how have you developed your policy in terms of, we have innovations, but we need to know if maybe they're having startups, let's say that it's, exhaling, fumes that are carcinogenic to then, to us human beings here, how is that addressed? And if there are innovations, do we have any criteria that has to be met, you as a university, for everyone now to actually tick off the checklist that they actually have met this threshold as far as innovation is concerned from the university?
Well, thanks very much. That's a fairly complex question, but let's start from the fact that we've all come to a realization that it's not a one-man show. Yes. It's not about me only doing something about innovation and building a startup. Yes. Even a startup is a team of people in most cases. And to build this ecosystem is about networks. And this is a reflection of the networks coming from development agency, private sector, incubation hubs, and so on and so forth. And from academia. One. Second is that when we mention sustainability, it means we need a certain set of skills to understand what is sustainability. First, it has to be informed by a genuine problem in the ecosystem. Yes. I ought to have really seen a problem, because then when I create a solution to that and there is someone who wants to pay for that, then you start introducing an element of stickiness to the product or service, and then it gradually becomes sustainable. So, and then in the context of the environment, which NetFund will be even more authoritative to talk about, is we try as much as possible in the education system and in the incubation programs to expose the innovators to the concept of sustainability, caring for the environment. When we talk about gender balance, or what is the impact going to be on children, for example, if you innovate, whom are you likely to impact? So there's a certain set of guidelines that we use. We really don't shape the policy as such. We do have government supporting the Nairobi Innovation Week and the general incubation agenda. We've got PSS, for example, for ICT and innovation under ICT. We've got Ministry of Education, where we've got not NetFund, we've got National Research Fund and Kenya National Innovation Agency. and in the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives, we've got a lot of campaign around sustainability and the policy atmosphere around that. So it takes collaboration, different people playing different roles from the education system, from the incubation ecosystem, and from the policy ecosystem.
Policy ecosystem. Recently, if I may come to you, Daktari, we had Marvin King, Professor Marvin King here in the country, and of course the issue of you talk about the whole scope of looking at innovation, which is also integrated thinking, that you're looking at environmental sustainability. And it says, of course, from any particular company, what needs to be addressed as well is the issue of integrated thinking, that we're just not looking at the bottom line. It's not the profit and loss as well, but how also are you making sure what you take from the environment, you're giving back to the environment. And we're not talking about this corporate social responsibility where, yes, we have University of Nairobi just coming to give us a Kodak moment and calling the cameras and the media to, you don't see them shaking hands because they're giving scholarships. We're talking holistic view of how we are treating the environment. It's very key even as we're innovating. So you as an organization, then, how are you able to partner with Nairobi University in terms of these innovations that, yes, they have the threshold, but they go through the grid that you have developed as an organization to make sure we have a sustainable environment? And even Nairobi University also is actually embracing the integrated thinking. I don't know if they are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you will tell us.
One of the things that we are very keen on the Nairobi Innovation Week is actually our input mainly will be how do we green these value chains. If you have an idea that is not green at the moment,
yes,
before you establish and become a big corporation, how can we make sure that your processes will be green? And I think this is an idea that even the business community have come to appreciate. If we don't look at the whole thing as a system, we don't think about sustainability, then the business itself is going to suffer.
Yes.
So when we talk about degrading the environment, that means you'll not have enough power in Kenya because most of our power comes from hydro generation. You might not have water for your own facility. And some of these issues on climate change and increasing temperatures,
yes,
like in Nairobi, recently has been very hot. And it becomes, when temperature increases by one degree, the productivity almost drops around 5%. So if you are living in a hot environment, that means your productivity as a businessman is not where it's supposed to be. So our interest, especially on these innovations, for all the green innovations, I think we'll be more interested even to improve or add more funds to make sure that they are turned into businesses. For those ideas that are not green, I think we are going to look at how can we work with the University of Nairobi to green them. And something very interesting, I saw one of the innovators there is actually taking all the computer waste, and he is actually developing a 3D printer. We have a 3D printer made in Kenya, which I think is one of the transformative and disruptive technologies of the future. So if I go to the facility right now, they have that 3D scan. They can scan me and print me with plastics, and I come out quite nicely, exactly as I look. And these are great ideas, and these guys are just taking computer waste, converting them to 3D printers, and right now they are selling those 3D printers, and they're part of the Nairobi Innovation Week, which I think is quite exciting.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from Robert Karanja, and first of all, tell us about Vilgrow Kenya, and how also is it coming into the Nairobi Week Innovation? How has it been exceedingly beneficial for you as well, as a program that has been running over the years annually? You can tell us more about that. And of course, I know you talked about medicine, the medical field. Environment is very key. We have cases right now, and we'll discuss later, of how also some of these innovations are causing us, problems. We have cases in Mombasa where some of these effluents, they're being, deposited in the rivers as well. Yeah. Some of them, of the factories which are producing batteries. We have cases of lead, which actually is affecting babies and miscarriages, in parts of Mombasa as well. As we're looking at that interface between innovation and medicine, how could we have an even kill, that one is not destroying the other?
Okay. It's a good question, and let me step back a little bit and start off with Vilgrow Kenya and what we do.
Yes.
So Vilgrow Kenya, we are a business incubator, which basically means we are an intermediary organization. So if you're a student or a faculty at the University of Nairobi, maybe at the School of Life Sciences or School of Medicine, and you've been researching on a problem, and you've eventually come up to your eureka moment and you say, aha, we've invented something, we've invented a solution for problem X. At that point, what you have is actually an invention. And that process was really just research. Now, the ability to translate that invention from a research output and to translate it into a business opportunity, a market opportunity, with a business that is being able to go after that market opportunity, create jobs, create wealth, solve the problem in a sustainable manner, is what we are calling innovation. And so what we do as Vilgro Kenya is that we're able to speak to both worlds. We're able to speak to the world of science. So we come to academia and we say, what research have you been working on? What are the dissertations that your students have been submitting for the master's, for the PhD, even for the undergraduate dissertations? And what do you have in there that is of value? And then being able to have this conversation of how do we then give these ideas a life of their own outside of the academic papers. How do you register a company around this idea? How do you get a proof of concept of whether that idea actually works in the marketplace? How do you build a business model for this idea? How do you validate it? How do you de-risk it such that investors can now come and not just listen to the science, but they're actually being told about, so in terms of, if you're, let's say for example, if I'm a scientist working on malaria, I wouldn't be talking about the prevalence of malaria, or as you are talking about some of the issues we are having in the coast right now, prevalence of chikungunya,
yes.
Yellow fever, dengue. Instead of talking in terms of just prevalence and speaking to the academic world, you don't solve the problems that way. It doesn't address the no-do gap. So what has been happening over the years is that we've really developed so many solutions for the problems that face us in this country, in this region, but we failed to be able to articulate them and to translate them from just a knowledge into an actual solution, addressing the no-do gap. And you can only do so by being able to take those ideas and actually turn them into a successful business that investors can now come and invest in. And so what incubators and accelerators want to do is to have this continuous discussion with the universities, be it on medicine, be it on environment, be it on agriculture, be it on IT, whatever it is that the university is doing, because the universities, the research organizations, they create and generate new knowledge. And that new knowledge is what we want to be able to start saying, how do we mainstream this knowledge into our economy? One of the main challenges we are facing right now is just unemployment. We are churning out, I don't know how many engineering degree graduates, how many BSc degree graduates, how many MBA graduates. And all of these guys are going out there looking for jobs. Yes. How do you make them start looking at their knowledge as the source of a creation, of creating their own job, and jobs for others, because you're able to help them to utilize their knowledge in the marketplace, to package it for the marketplace. So translating from the knowledge to a commodity. The commodity could either be a service, it could be a product, but being able to actually build a successful business around that solution is what we're talking about in the name of innovation. And that's what Innovation Week is really trying to do. And what Innovation Week has done is that University of Nairobi has really done a great job of saying we need to change the way we look at academia in this country, in this region. One of the challenges we face, for example, in the health sector is that as a market, the whole of Africa, we're about 1 billion people on this continent. If you look at what is the size we constitute in terms of the global pharmaceutical market size, we represent about 1% of their market. So most people, most companies, when they're developing health solutions, they're looking at the US, they're looking at Japan, they're looking at Europe, Australia as the actual market for their inventions. So for us, if you look at the life expectancy for somebody who's born in sub-Saharan Africa vis-a-vis the life expectancy for somebody who's born in the US or Europe, Japan, Australia, you realize that there's a world of difference. We are literally, I mean, we think we're doing well when we hit 60. But for them, if you go to Japan, 80, 90 octogenarians are actually, young. For them, 100 is what is becoming the new norm. And the difference is because their market is able to attract investments. So their ability to pay is what makes them an attractive market for investors. So being able to understand how do you speak the language of science, and science is talking about problem-solution fit. How do you speak the language of business, which is now product-market fit? And then understanding how do you speak the language of investors, because the people with the ideas, and this is typically the young people coming from these universities, the faculty that's teaching them, how are they able to attract the money that they need to be able to translate that idea into a solution that Wanjiko is now being able to meet, whether it is in the hospital, in the pharmacy, in the supermarket, wherever it is that she's going, at an affordable cost, at an appropriate quality, and in a way that it's going to actually impact her life. So that's what we want to be able to do. And Innovation Week, Nairobi Innovation Week is bringing together the academia, so we are meeting the folks like Daktari who are teaching in the universities. We're meeting the people with the ideas. It could be the students, it could be the faculty, it could be even other people that have graduated recently that have been working on solutions. And we're saying, so tell us about your ideas. And we're helping them to think through those ideas. We poke holes as mentors and coaches, and we tell them, have you thought about it this way? What about if you thought of this different approach? And then basically get them to the point where they're able to now stand with their idea, it's been polished, talk to investors and say, this is what I want to do. I'm addressing problem X, I'm using my idea Y, and this is where I've reached so far. I need to get amount Z to be able to get to the next point of the development, or to get to the finish line, which is to basically launch your product in the marketplace. And in so doing, we are creating a knowledge-driven economy that actually starts taking our youth and all this investment we've been doing from the free primary, now we're talking about free secondary, and of course when you think about those who are in university, it's actually highly subsidized education. How do we actually make it start contributing to the bottom line of this country? The youth need jobs, they need to be able to create wealth for themselves, and the government needs to increase their tax base. So being able to create jobs, not just in the informal sector, because I think what has happened is we've relegated youth to informal sector in a lot of our discussions, but actually saying we are going to take this youth that we've invested so many years of education and translate them into the formal sector of creating jobs.
All right, let's come to, of course, the youth and also the follow-up. So if you actually become the champion, is that it? You're given an award. Of course, there's funding also that comes maybe for many good years. But what is the follow-up aspect from the Nairobi Innovation Week? Have they been following on your progress as well? You can tell us.
So in terms of follow-up, one of the things actually that we are working with Nairobi Innovation Week is on the final day of the Nairobi Innovation Week, we'll be having a breakfast where we'll be bringing together many partners, enablers, to now discuss how we're going to make this more sustainable. Not the idea that you're having Nairobi Innovation Week happening once in a year and then you wait for the next year. How, during this transition period, how are we going to make sure that those startups during that period are attached to other enablers in this week? Because we're all partners. How are they attached to other partners who can help mentor them, give them access to finance, get them to form cooperation sort of partnerships with corporates who can help them, because at the end of the day, startups are usually the people who are taking the first leap in innovation. They're trying to change and create a difference in an industry. And for JZ, one of the biggest focuses, like how are these innovators being supported to solve the big problems? How is digital going to help to solve the big problems in the world, in Africa? So whether you're talking about health, whether you're talking about environment, a lot of these challenges are coming because the old ways of doing things have not been able to solve these problems. But now with, for example, mobile, you're able to reach more people. With 3D printing, you're going to be able to reach Industry 4.0. We're going to get young people being able to model new machines and get them out into market faster. So how are we going to, during this period after the Nairobi Innovation, we connect them to enablers in the space and partners who are going to support them? Because all these partners are there, but how do you bring them together? And I think Nairobi Innovation Week is a very good opportunity, bringing everybody together, get them to have conversations, and then chat a way forward. And that's what, as Jay said, we are very much part of.
Yeah, but we can speak glowingly about digital, but we can also try and see the rough and the smooth that really comes with digital. Because even at the same time, as much as, yes, you say it is a prime solution to many of this malaise that we are having in the society with environmental degradation, also the people are using technology to perpetrate their evils. Of course, we know cases in point. We've had the Volkswagen scandal as well with the defeating devices. All this is technology, because you develop a software that will actually cheat people that, yes, these are the emissions that we're having of nitrogen oxide into the environment. But drilling deeper, we can find people have used technology to come up with these softwares as well. And this is what we are talking about. Even you having all these Nairobi Innovation Weeks, how are we making sure that the innovations that are coming to the fore, they actually fail safe first of all, and we don't have cases of people who use schemes and softwares to cheat and extract from the environment, like what we've had from the VW
that's quite
scandal.
Interesting, because so part of my background, education-wise, was my master's was in working with IoT, and interestingly, I worked with the company that created the devices that actually got the emissions, from the company.
This defeating devices.
Yeah.
Yes.
So again, you see, this is digital creating opportunities to also solve the problems. So it's true, it's a double-edged sword all the time, but then I think we always have to focus on the potential, because how is the future going to look like if we become Luddites, like previous people who used to during the Industrial Revolution in England break down the machines because they think that it will be a threat, would have really slowed down. Yes, there was pollution that was created, but now we're coming up with the solutions. And if you think about it, a lot of these countries, whether it's Germany, whether it's Japan, have learned the lessons, through the industrialization, through using technology, have learned the lessons. And now the idea is like, how can we work together as partners, the different countries? You mentioned Israel, they've figured out a lot of solutions because of being in a very arid area. So how do we learn from each other? And that's also what we're seeking to work with the startups, getting them exposed to new ideas of how you tackle your emissions, how you tackle your social impact. So for example, the startups that we are working with, right from the beginning, when you're coming up with your business model, you're being asked questions about how is going to be your impact on the environment, how is your impact going to be on people. So a lot of times in the past, that wasn't the first thing that you think about. It was all about profits. But today, with all the partners that we're having, the questions right from the beginning are, what's your social impact? How are you measuring your impact? How are you reducing the kind of negative impact that you're creating? So I think I'm an optimist, and I think that technology, digital and industrial, is going to transform the future, and we should embrace it, although always be cautious of it being a double-edged sword.
Right. Maybe if I could just add a little bit.
Yeah, we'll come to you. Let's say from Daktari so far, community members who have or interested in the innovative ideas is where your target is so far. We want to know, aside from karaoke and John and Dete, who are the other people who've really benefited, and what sort do we have to have an academics slant to it, that I have to go through the rigors of maybe having a degree for me to come up with this novel idea? For the populace who don't really understand, and it might be very esoterical for them this morning, and we're not really speaking their language, but they have a novel idea, like the young man from was it Narok, who came up with that torch, remember, for actually now scaring away the lions. And of course, I don't know how do we call it?
Lion lights.
Lion lights, the young one that actually came up with the lion light. He's not been to any university, he's not been to Nairobi University, but yet he came up with a very novel idea. He's won awards outside the country, he's a recognized innovator as well, and that particular innovation has been patented right now. But we don't recognize these people here. You as a university, you don't even give them honorary degrees because of these novel ideas. So how do we enroll people who are watching this morning and they're feeling they're sort of excluded, that this is a university affair, it's an academic affair, it's for these organizations as well?
Wonderful. That's a smart question actually to ask. First of all, there's a reason we didn't call it University of Nairobi Innovation Week. We call it Nairobi Innovation Week because then it makes everyone feel like part and parcel of it, and that's why we've been able to grow very rapidly. Second, one time someone told me that, asked me whether I'm creative. All right, would you say that somebody who has a background of physics is creative? And the answer is no. But the truth is that everyone is creative, it's just that we're creative in different ways. We're innovative in different ways. And academic qualifications don't necessarily form the basis for being able to innovate effectively. So anyone can innovate, anyone can create a solution to a problem as long as you can articulate the problem and then you work towards a solution. Now, in the education system, it's gradually evolving from teaching to enterprising We talk a lot about research, somewhere in between there, but gradually universities are starting to become more innovative universities and trying to expose students and young people that it's not about one skill. No, it's about being problem-based. Focus on the problem, and then we work towards specific solutions. So right to your question, I think we're evolving towards getting out of the comfort zone of university to do the traditional activity. To champion Nairobi Innovation Week is a reflection of an evolution that university is beginning to engage more aggressively on being industry-oriented, solution-oriented, impact-oriented, and convert the knowledge that you acquire into specific solutions. So we are arms open, and since we don't have the capacity as a university to handle everything, that's why we bring in partners like GIZ. GIZ is very happy with that guy, but it's happening through the conduit of Nairobi Innovation Week. So because we can't handle everything, and we work with as many partners as we can to channel. So we create some kind of a pipe. You see, one of the things that University of Nairobi has had a privilege of being able to do is the harnessing power. So being able to attract government, being able to attract private sector, being able to attract non-university students. We have a lot of applications, over 350 applications we received of startups during this campaign. Probably 40% of them have nothing to do with university. So it's that ability to create an atmosphere that is conducive and people don't feel uncomfortable about anything. They see GSA, they see NetFund, they see, Vilgro, University of Nairobi. We've got so many partners. And somehow, someone gets their corner. Somehow, they build their network in the process. Now, I also think that the value of media is extremely high.
Yes.
You see, we created a platform we're calling NIW Startups, which is like a spin-off from the NIW agenda, which is focusing on the startups agenda at a national level, okay? Now, we defined one of the attributes of that program is discoverability, okay? So we're trying to give the startups an opportunity to be discovered. So our goal, and we have a Vision 2025 around it, is that if you're a startup in the region, in Kenya or in the region, you've got to find your way onto that platform, because then GIZ will discover you, then NetFund will cover you, then Vilgro will cover you, and they have the expertise to incubate even when we don't have. See what I mean? So, and the media has that specific opportunity to be able to showcase. As guys, we will link them to you, and you will blow the story for them.
All right, let's say from Daktari as well. So we've had some of these schemes that they come with the IT people who they deem to be very smart, and they want to be cagey with some information like what VW had done. And of course, you are telling us, yes, this particular software, you know where it was developed. Of course, not
no, I know
the counter one.
I know the counter one.
The counter one.
Yeah, the counter one. It was actually not only it was a hardware and software, because this company is the one that I was with. They develop most of the devices to get automotive emissions for most of the environmental protection agencies around the world. So I think it's also an opportunity, when you get young, so this was a big company, but if you can get younger innovators, getting access to, 3D printing, to microcontrollers, because we have some startups which are actually teaching young people in our program in the coast, how to, make small robots and using sensors and such. And if they can actually come up with ideas, there's one young person who the other day at one of the competitions, he's a high school student in the coast, and he was able to make a small drone which can go underwater and over water. And his focus was like, he was worried about the environmental degradation happening in the coast with the coral. So he was like, how can I solve this? How can I, come up with something I can go and monitor? And instead of divers going in and, with their flippers destroying the coral, can have this small autonomous vehicle going down and then checking, the oil pipelines and things like that, instead of destroying the coral. So I think, on top of all these other challenges that they are with technology, there's all these young people. If we give them the access to these technologies, you don't know what kind of ideas they can come up with to solve the problems which we might be even having in the next 50 years.
All right, and how do we rope in? We come to you. You tell us more about how we rope in these particular ideas, for the benefit of the environment. When you hear support like somebody, or when you hear innovation that we have somebody has come up with a drone that is going underwater, when we hear there are people, yes, we came up with a counter software, and I don't know if NetFund also is largely looking at this, because I think the sort of fume that is emanating from some of the diesel-driven vehicles here in the country is astounding. And yes, we saw this particular huge scandal in the US, and not to mention this particular company that also came and set up shop here in this country, right? And we wondered, where were all these cars that, they had all these defeating devices, plugged in, Where were they taken? Were we a dumping site? Have we done any interrogation to try and see why did we come up with this? Yes, we might say, oh, we have this particular company which has come to this country, or we have you know, employment opportunities. It is good investment from this particular country. But where is the flip side of it? You as an organization, have you done your due diligence to find out, yes, we have this particular scandal in this particular country, yet these guys are coming to set up shop here. Where do they take these particular vehicles? Do they come to assemble it here? In the fig leaf of, you know, trying to come and use these particular sites as a dumping site for all these vehicles that were not wanted in America.
Right. Maybe the best way to look at this is, let's go to the Bible a little bit. God created two people, Adam and Eve. One cheated the other. They married, they got two kids, one killed the other. So I don't think there is a time in the world when we will not have people who want to sabotage what we achieve.
Who cheated who?
Eve brought a fruit to this guy, right?
The devil cheated someone. It's not Eve who cheated there. Yeah?
Well, if you go that way, then we might take the blame to the bad party. But most of these cars from the BW that were cheating on the US,
yes,
their emission levels are way better than the cars we have in Kenya. In Kenya, we don't have emission standards, and air pollution, especially thinking about the city of Nairobi, is around 10 times more than what the WHO recommends.
Yes.
So actually, currently, there was a study done by WHO that indicates in Kenya we are losing around 15 to 18,000 people because of air pollution issues. So that is how many post-election violence, around 10 of them per year. We are losing that kind of people.
That is staggering.
Yeah, it's actually very worrying, the amount of pollution we have in the city. And so far, there was a couple of things that the initiative that the government is putting in place to try to address that. But also as Net Fund, we are starting a program called the ASAP, looking at a systems approach to air pollution. So we want to get data and information and evidence around these issues so that we can articulate them to the policymakers and see whether we can have a regulation that limits the number of the emission from our vehicles. In Kenya, it's very interesting. If you brought a car in 1970s, it's still on the roads. And the emission rate in the 1970s were way higher than what even the US would recommend. So when you look at the fleets in Nairobi, we have a lot of issues there around pollution, and I think is one of the reasons why we have so much cancer cases in the country, because most of our vehicles are diesel. Again, looking at policy issues,
yes,
diesel is more polluting than petrol, but in Kenya, diesel is way cheaper than petrol, so it encourages us who are capitalistic in nature to think about buying diesel cars. And when you buy diesel cars, then the kind of emission that comes from the tailpipes are quite detrimental to our own health and also for the environment.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. George, because I think, Dr. Robert, you need to tell us, because we can see it's quite cheap to have diesel in this country, yet the flip side of it is the cancer burden that we're carrying. That is, the cost of treatment is way too high, prohibitive. How do we come up with an amicable solution? Because with the source of a problem, we know it. Yet the government is not really coming up with very robust policies on this. Yeah. Over the years, he mentions still some of his particular vehicles are on the road still. Diesel emitting vehicles, you know, or driven vehicles are still on the road. If we want to tackle the issue of cancer in the country, and wonder why are so many people, you know, getting, you know, inflicted by cancer, we have the problem. Yeah. But what is the medical fraternity doing? You know the problem.
So, and that's, go back to what Tony initially said about how we create a knowledge-driven economy. It takes a discussion of three parties. There has to be academia, those who generate knowledge. Yes, but there has to be, I'm coming to your answer, there has to be the government, and then there has to be the private sector. Now, ideally, in a situation like this one, you need to create a market demand for a solution. And that can only happen when the government steps up and says, as the regulator, I'm going to ensure that there has to be, so the industries, the vehicles must meet a certain, you know, like you said, we don't have any regulatory oversight or regulatory guidelines in terms of what is the permitted pollution levels. So whether it is from the exhaust fumes from the car or from the factories or what have you. So government should be able to say, this is where we think we need to be. WHO's recommendations are 1, 2, 3. Yes. Can we do that? Then the next question would be, how do we do it? Because then the industry will have an outcry. They will say, well, tell us how we achieve that. Now, that creates an opportunity for those who are in the world of engineering, in the world of all these specialized streams of knowledge, to be able to say, we can create a solution. Now, if we create a solution, there has to be a market demand. So the government needs to be able to both give regulatory guidelines and also be the stick that forces the industry to go buy these solutions. So that's that's what we call the triple helix. So being able to look at our big problems. So for example, going back to even what President Uhuru has recently done with the Big Four, of saying we want to target issues of universal health coverage, we want to target issues of housing, issues of manufacturing, issues of food security. Now, those are big challenges that we're facing as a country. We're not being able to feed ourselves. We're not able to access quality health care that is affordable. We're not being able to even house ourselves. We're living in slums. So what do we do? Now, it takes, in some cases, the easiest way to address it is basically to say, what are the technical solutions? You people who have a technical understanding, you're in the universities. You're not just there to teach. You're there to actually generate knowledge, produce solutions. And as you do so, the government can create an enabling environment. In some cases...
Fantastic.
But
what I want to know is the fact that, yes, you're talking about long term. We involve all the stakeholders looking forward. But now we have a niggling worry, and the problem is with us. And we know the source of a problem, or an angle, a facet of it, we know the source of a problem. What will be the prime solution? The government is not doing anything. NetFund is not coming up with any policies. No regulatory framework is given on this. Yet we're paying our taxes. Yeah, we have the Ministry of Environment. We wonder if the new minister will actually try and address this as well. So, I mean, how do we address this, Kariuki?
So, interestingly, this was actually one of the topics of my research. So, the government actually did come up with, you know, a draft air quality regulation, emissions regulation. I think that was in 2014, and I believe they must have been gazetted between then and now. And now the challenge is always, okay, fine, you have the regulator, so NEMA, coming up with this. Then now that's where the really good opportunities of things like Nairobi Innovation Week come up, right? Where, you know, you need to have a way of getting the ideas about the challenges that we have and the opportunities actually that we have in our society to young innovators. So, for example, I do know that, you know, there are a number of young people, you know, going for different hackathons, coming up with solutions around air quality monitoring. I do know that, for example, I think there was something that was being done with UNEP and MIT, you know, working with young people at the University of Nairobi, actually also to create this map out the city. So there are a lot of these things that are coming up. And actually also the challenge also sometimes is also to media, you know, sometimes to show us more of these young people who are doing this. And that's why I'm even happy that, you know, you're creating this opportunity for us to come here and talk about Nairobi Innovation Week today. And also, as seeming to be a friend to government now, is that I'm also very, you know, happy to see that in 2 occasions you've seen the CS for ICT coming to open NIW this year at the breakfast, and then there's also a second media breakfast where the CS for industrialization was there. So you're already seeing commitment from the government at NIW. So the idea is that slowly we're going to, you know, hear more of these stories. And actually, as the media comes also to NIW and showcases the different innovators and what they're coming up with, other young people will be more inspired to also come up with solutions. So I think going back to this issue of air quality, I think there's some work that is already been done, which is commendable to the government, to the Ministry of Environment, to NEMA. The challenge is now, how do we get more people to innovate around this and create these marketplaces and support them, connect them with enablers, what NIW is trying to do, bring together different enablers, work with the industrial parks which are being set up with the Kenya intellectual property, with other corporate partners, and partnering with these startups and innovators. All right,
thank you very much. You wanted to add something, Dr. George?
There's actually a very interesting innovation that came to our offices last week. And there's a guy within Nairobi who have designed an electric mkokoteni. In fact, a tuk-tuk, just a motorbike and a tuk-tuk, can emit as much as 12 cars. So these kind of rudimentary technologies are being replaced by these great innovations. So I hope that is one of the ideas that we can try to push up, and I think it can be the right decision towards improving air pollution.
Interesting findings. Also, I saw another day, I think it was yesterday actually, that also a lady has come up with malaria repellent sandals. You know, yeah. So actually, not mosquito repellents, not really malaria, and of course, you know, mosquitoes, they're known to actually transmit malaria as well. Those are some of the simple, basic stuff that we're really talking about in the village, and we come up with these sandals. You just wear sandals at home, and you know, there are mosquito repellents as well. Those are good innovations. Even as we are winding up right now, we had a singer. I don't know who now will be the guest that you do have. Innovating tomorrow to come and drive this particular theme that you have the Innovation Week running under. You can tell us who is, you know, the international guest that you've invited this year. And maybe also your closing remarks is also our guests prepare, the rest of the panelists prepare also their headline thoughts as well.
You know, just as you were coming to this, you know, observation of closing and asking about the chief guest, you were actually mentioning two particular examples. And one person asked me about a year ago, he said, okay, so where can I get a portfolio of all these ideas?
Yes. Like,
so I can figure out which one to support or which one to get involved in. And that's why we created the NIW platform. It's an electronic platform where, you know, startups are putting their profiles, they give the kind of problems they are solving, which is the target market, how far they've gone, what do they need, and so on and so forth. And our goal is to build a national platform that you would cluster things, and you can easily get which kind of ideas. We put videos in there so you could easily understand, and then media probably can use that as a way to elevate. And our conversation with GIZ is, how do you support that platform? Because, you know, as Innovation Week, we don't have the funds to sustain that kind of a platform and the analytics that go into it, the kind of partnerships that you need to enable, and so on and so forth. So we hope that during the breakfast on 9th of March, we'll be able to come up with specific ways of sustaining that movement. All right, in the context of guests, you know, Triple Helix has become the way to look at these things. So from local, you know, office, we have a lot of support from the highest office, that's the President's office, and ministers, a number of ministers have confirmed participation. But beyond the country, we have over 70 delegates from Finland. And that comes from academia, from private sector. We've got some of the best serial innovators that we know, and they're all supported by the Finnish government to be part of the Nairobi Innovation Week. And there, some of them will be facilitating workshops with startups. There will be judges during the pitching, and so on and so forth. Then we've got a delegation from Germany, thanks to GIZ. We've got a delegation from Israel. Israel has been a strong partner over the years. We've got investors coming from Israel, as well as incubation owners. You know, the incubation system in Israel is very, very strong. And so we want to pick as many lessons as we can from there. Yeah, those are the three countries. Then we've got Norway. We've got some delegation also coming from Norway. And I don't have all the names. Next time I'll probably give you a long list.
Sure.
But to me, one of the things that is encouraging about that is that, yeah, there are investors coming from out there interested in this kind of startups over here, and we're trying to build that kind of linkage. And number two is that we're making it global in its outlook. You know, I went to Finland's event about 2 years ago. Slash attracts over 18,000 people, and Al Gore was the chief guest late last year. And that's the vision we have, that there is no reason when Obama came here a while ago, about 3-4 years ago, we all went to KICC. And the day he left, we also went back to our houses, all right? So but we build this movement called Nairobi Innovation. We can internationalize it. Every year we think about higher and higher profiles and expectations so that we can also bring the world here, and we can have a reason to say, Obama, you're missing out, please come back again.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dr. George.
So I'll make the case why innovation is critical for the country.
Yes.
We entered this space around 4 years ago as NetFund, and we were actually looking at ideas and actually incubating them and turning them into businesses. The one we ran last year, we got around 30,000 entries. So that is a number of great ideas in Kenya. Out of these, around 200 of them were actually incubatable and turnable into businesses. In the last 4 years, we have been able to create around 3,700 jobs. We have been able to connect around 500 homes with cheap power to reduce the use of the latent lights. And we have also been able to provide around 6,000 homes with clean, safe water for consumption. So when we talk about the innovations, it's not at that level of the university and the academia. We are also talking about the real impact that people are kind of experiencing on the ground. So those are 3,700 people now with actually what we call green jobs. So innovations is a great idea, and I think we are willing to really support and continue this, and I hope it is going to become a movement in Kenya.
All right, Dr. Karanja.
Thank you. I think for us as Build Grow Kenya, number one, we're also fairly new. We've been in operation for the last 3 years, and our focus is being able to support innovators that are working in the health and life sciences space. We've seen a lot of tremendous potential in this country, and I must say Kenya is highly favored. One of the things that I can tell you about Kenya, before the world had any response to HIV, we produced something called Kemron, and that was at Cambridge, and that is actually what led to the establishment of Kieti. Since then, I think we've had a backtrack of that idea of saying we can actually go out there. We are world beaters. We can solve problems that are at that level. And kind of started feeling small, and I don't know why, shrunk a little bit more than we should. We can be able to solve a lot of problems. A good example is going back to malaria. You talked about malaria repellents.
Yes.
Kenya is one of the countries that did some of the earliest randomized controlled trials that convinced the world that you should actually invest in a harmful technology known as a mosquito bed net that has been impregnated with insecticides. Now, if you think about Kenya, around that time, we had a struggling pyrethrum industry. So we were the #1 producer of pyrethrum globally. And that has really shrunk. I grew up in Limuru. When I was growing up, we could see pyrethrum everywhere. Today, it doesn't exist. At the same time, we had companies like Rivertex, the textile industries, that basically shut down and collapsed. And we are now importers of mitumba. Now, all that needed to happen was a discussion from academia, in this case, Cambridge, to the Kenya Pyrethrum Board, and people like Rivertex, and say, hello, we are working on something called a mosquito net, and you guys are producing textiles, and you guys are producing pyrethrum from which you get insecticide. Can we work together and solve this problem and actually become an exporter of this solution to the world? So we solved the problem as the health sector, yes. Malaria has really gone down, and I celebrate that. But we lost a huge economic opportunity that could have continued to provide jobs and sustainability for many farmers, for many people that were employed in the textile industry, and we are now importing the mosquito nets that we're using. So that is what we're talking about innovation. Thinking bigger, take this discussion to a point where we are saying, what are the big problems in the world? What are we doing in Kenya that can solve those problems? And create an export-oriented economy. Create jobs, create wealth, and transform the nation.
Right, and of course we see even as malaria is going down in Kieti is rising because of rising temperatures as well. Issues of environment is also impacting on our development as well and our progresses. Let's hear from Karaoke as we're winding up briefly. Moving forward from the IT world, we've not even discussed artificial intelligence. Is my job also on the chopping block? Where will we have an automatic auto cue reader and a presenter as well? Yeah, no. Or are you coming up with something like that? I need to know so that I can prepare for tomorrow. So this is innovation for tomorrow.
I think a lot of people are always mentioning that about artificial intelligence, but I think it just creates more opportunities. It will be more opportunities for people to learn faster and to solve problems faster. And I think the focus even of Nairobi Innovation Week, and everybody's like, how do we support startups, innovators who are solving the big problems in the world, even though they might be doing it in a small way. And I always know Professor Bitangedem always has very good articles, and I can see today he's writing one on digital tech's role in Africa's transformation. I think, please, the viewers read that article, because digital has a very big opportunity of helping to solve the big challenges in Africa. Artificial intelligence, for example, is going to help, for example, bringing together, medical records, bringing together, big data will be able to crunch data much faster. If you're talking about epidemics or, drug trials, make that a lot faster. There's one which was being done, I think, in South Africa for tuberculosis, getting the different strains and using artificial intelligence and big data to solve that. And I'll go now to, the late Professor Wangari Maathai, and her hummingbird metaphor. We should all just do the little that we can, and all that together will be able to make a difference. So we should just emulate the hummingbird.
Thank you, and I'll give you this opportunity just briefly to tell us, of course, the dates for the Nairobi Innovation Week. What do we expect? Of course, we know the theme that is running under as we're closing.
Okay, thanks very much, and maybe I should just really look at the camera.
Yeah, you can look at camera. Right?
Okay, there you go. So, of course, the dates are the 5th to the 9th of March. We start off with a number of side events that are happening from the 5th and 6th. The official opening is officially on the 7th of March, where we expect a lot of high-profile guests. And then there will be a lot of panels, discussions, and breakaway sessions that are happening on Thursday. And then we'll have the grand day for us, which is a very important day, which is the Startups Day on the Friday, the 9th of March. We expect over 15 pitches, which are the most promising startups happening on the Friday. But on the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoon, there are over 100 pitches taking place. Now, we've got several sub-themes under the theme of innovating for a better tomorrow. We have artificial intelligence, SDGs, environment, and so on and so forth, healthcare, education. So the different stakeholders who are focusing on this. And we've got over 50 different partners, which therefore means there's a lot of content. Start with the development agencies, the UN agencies, the embassies, and then we've got government. We've got about 4 different ministries that we're working together. And then incubators are over 30, and accelerators. There's a lot of private sector involvement, financial institutions, which therefore means there's a lot of enrichment. We also are harvesting investors, because we don't want the startups to pitch to anyone. We want them to build networks and potential customers and so on and so forth. We also have a huge exhibition of 115 booths, and they are pretty much all full. Be there. See you next month.
Thank you.